right, Mr. SimpleBiz guy, let's start the show.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the SimpleBiz360 podcast. My name's Jeff Mason, and I am so honored today to have a guest in the studio, Mr. Mike Bitter. Mike, how are you today, sir?
Good, Jeff. It's great to see you.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you asking me to
Oh,
do this.
man.
This is awesome.
Thanks for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you could.
Let's see. I'm a St. Louis guy.
Okay.
Born here, raised here, lived here. Got into trouble here, got better here, started a business here, sold a business here, and I'm still doing what I do,
Awesome.
which I've been doing for about the last 40 years. So
Awesome.
that's a short take on
That's
it.
a short take. Well, that's good. We'll get into more the long takes coming up for sure. But no, thank you so much for being on the show.
Sure.
And folks, if you're listening, you can catch us on 28 audio directories, and we're on YouTube and Rumble. And then our URL home is simplebiz360.com. Michael,
Yeah.
what's your website?
My website is bizdevstrategies.com. That's one of them. The other one is crmgrowthengines.com.
Okay.
We'll be talking about that.
Absolutely. And we're going to put the links up later, too. So, well, folks, we're going to just give you a little intro to how Michael, and is it Michael or Michael? What do you prefer?
Oh, yeah, Mike's fine.
Okay. How we met and why there's just a synergistic set of passion, lanes going on here that we're going to talk about. But Mike and I are part of what's called Christian Business Men's Connection, CBMC. We get together every month with a bunch of business owners in what they call a trust advisory forum. And so we kind of met there, and we've gotten to understand that each of us has a passion for customer service and the processes that lead to better customer service. And we also have a passion for God and Jesus, and specifically, and we also we also have a common background in that we both come from that addictive background where we experienced a supernatural transformation in our lives.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a lot about all this stuff today, but so as we travel down the lane, we're going to let the listeners and the viewers get to know you a little bit. So you're from St. Louis.
Yep.
Now, what kind of family makeup? A lot of brothers and sisters?
I am the oldest of 7.
Are you really?
I am indeed. 6 of boys and 1 girl. One daughter. Yeah, the queen, we used to call her.
The queen. Okay, so when mom puts rolls on the table, how many go on? 7 or 14?
Yeah, 20.
20.
Yeah, well,
all right.
6 boys. So.
And then 6 boys. So then, do you guys take 1 at a time or 2 at a time? Or
It's winner take all.
Oh,
it's
my gosh.
hit it as fast as you can. He who eats the fastest gets the mostest. That's how it was in my house.
Gosh. I was just listening to an interview with a football player, a young rookie, and he was one of 5 kids, and he really recognized as being tough. And they said, "Where did you get your toughness from?" He said, "We used to jump on mom and dad's bed, and I was the youngest of 5, so I was always on the bottom.
Yeah,
I had to fight my way out of there.
Oh yeah,
I can only imagine dinners and meals and
just roughhousing in general.
Yeah.
My wife is one of 4 girls.
Yeah.
She's intrigued by this whole brother thing.
Yeah.
Because she didn't have it.
Yeah.
And we still are all here. We're still alive. We're still we still get together. We're close. We camp together. We hunt together. We play. We fish. We have a good time. And she's intrigued by some of the stories that we talk about and how brothers work things out versus sisters.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's a lot of fisticuffs in that.
It's a little more. I said it's a little more physical, Daddy. You guys get all emotional and you get all, we just pound on one another for a few minutes, then we make up and we go on to the next stage.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Oh my
right?
gosh, I had 2 sisters, so I didn't have the brotherly thing. But I see my 2 grandsons, and they're they roughhouse a little bit, But 6 boys, oh man, that's a lot. So how would you describe your childhood? Good? I mean, did you enjoy it?
It was a little chaotic. I came from a dysfunctional family. We all do. That was ruled by mental illness and alcoholism. So it was a little rough. Being the oldest, I had to take on a lot of responsibility at a young age. And so did my sister, who's just a 18 months younger than I. So we kind of had to grow up a little faster than we would have liked.
Wow.
But you know, it's that foxhole stuff that makes you close, and I think that's why we're so close today. All of us.
Yeah. So you're the oldest of all the children?
Yeah, I'm the oldest one. I have a brother my youngest brother's 20 years younger than me. So
Interesting.
I was already gone from the house before he was born.
Interesting.
But now we're close.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So,
Yeah.
so then life kind of you get into your high school age group time frame. What's Mike Bitter experiencing then? What do you like then?
Well, we moved a lot. So I was a kid who didn't have a lot of roots. And I think that was actually a good thing, because what that did for me is it taught me how to make friends, kind of get out there, put myself out there a little bit. Even though by nature I was kind of a shy kid, it sort of forced me into the breach. You know, I had to do something. I had to step out. Otherwise, I was in different schools every year. I went to 3 high schools.
In the St. Louis area?
Well, one of them, a brief stint in Mount Vernon, Illinois.
Okay.
But other than that, 3 high schools. I
Okay.
finally graduated from Maplewood, Richmond Heights
Okay.
High School in 1974.
Yeah.
It's a
Wow.
very good year.
Yeah, I'm a 76 graduate. So I'm 2
Okay,
years behind
there you go.
but,
Okay, movie of the year that year was The Godfather.
yeah, there you go. Oh yeah. And then Jaws came.
Yeah.
Jaws was in there too. But
Yeah.
yeah, crazy. So so you moved a lot. Were you just dad moving? It wasn't for job related. You guys
It was always job related.
Oh,
It was
was.
money related. It
Was,
was
okay.
job related. It was, the life of living in an alcoholic,
Sure.
dysfunctional home,
Sure.
and all that goes with that.
Okay.
And so, again, kind of pushed out there, and to find my way sort of into that world, to gain some popularity. When you're always the new kid, and you're always the smaller kid, and you're always the smart kid, that's a little rough.
Yeah. So you're all those things wrapped up
All
in
of
one.
those things.
Wow.
And so I discovered, at the age of 12, I discovered guitar, and I got really good at it. And started playing around with some guys from high school, did the Battle of the Bands thing, did all that,
Wow.
right? Eventually had a band that we went on and played a lot of clubs and did a lot of things.
Wow.
Of course, we all thought we were going to be the next, the next Rolling Stones or somebody like that. But, that introduced me to the world of wine, women, and song.
Yeah. The proverbial yes spiral in another direction.
Oh yes, and along the way, I got married in there, and started having some kids, and got a good job, had a decent job working for a little company called AT&T back in the day, which I'll talk a little bit about, and the responsibilities of life, the background that I grew up in, the predilection, and I do believe that alcoholism is a genetic thing. I do believe there's a predilection there, a genetic one. And so, I got the gene. And as things went on, I got into drugs, I got into alcohol, and really got to a place where it was not good. In fact, I was completely wiped out. I was morally, spiritually, physically wiped out. And suicidal, and that's where the sort of the rest of the real part of my life comes in, right? Is that place? And you talked about this whole addiction thing. You know what I'm talking about.
Right.
When you reach a point where you realize that you have absolutely no control over what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Especially the drugs and the alcohol. Yeah. My marriage was breaking up. I was on the verge of losing my job. Jeff, I weighed 127 pounds, and I was gray because I either smoked or drank my my breakfast, lunch, and dinner almost every day. And you don't do so well when you're in that spot. And a friend of mine, actually my brother-in-law at the time, married to my only sister, as we talked about, invited me to this thing called the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast. Now I grew up in a Catholic church, and I grew up with church, right? But somewhere along the line, I got super lost. I really got lost. And he invited me to this thing called the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast that was being held by the CBMC, Christian Businessmen's Connection, and that was in 1989.
Wow.
Okay, that was in February of 1989, and I went and heard a guy talk, and this guy talked about his life, and I said, "Man, that guy's telling my story."
Wow.
And he talked about being an alcoholic and an addict and all the things that go with that. And he talked about being suicidal. And I was there, Jeff. I was there. And he said, everything was bad. And I made one decision that changed my life. And he said, I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ that day. He talked about when he hit that bottom. And he said, and from that point on, his life turned around. And I thought, wow, I got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at a point in my prayers. I had prayed. I had prayed.
Yeah.
Foxhole prayers. You know the ones
Yeah.
I'm talking about. If you get me out of this, I'll blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
never made that commitment or made that absolute surrender, which is so very important. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But that surrender was really the point, because I really had nothing left. And I realized all of my plans, all my ideas, everything that I had tried was a waste. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. That's the old proverbial, how's that working for you? It wasn't. So I said the prayer. I said, the prayer to accept Lord Jesus as my Savior, my personal Savior. And I made that commitment to turn my life over to him at that point in time. And I felt nothing.
You seriously? Wow.
I felt nothing. And I went, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So I started to head back to my office, which was out in West County, St. Louis, West County area, about 20 miles from where we were meeting. And I got about halfway there, and all of a sudden, I was overwhelmed with this feeling of peace, a feeling of love, a feeling of light and lightness. I couldn't describe it. And I had to pull my car off to the side of the road because I was sobbing.
So how many minutes after
It was probably 20 minutes.
Wow. Amazing.
And I just knew, I absolutely knew at that point in time, something had changed. And things would never be the same. Now, it took another couple of weeks, but at that point, I just knew that I had been saved and I had been plucked from the dark depths that I was in. I just knew it.
Jeez.
And 3 weeks later, I found my way into recovery, and I've never looked back. That was St. Patrick's Day of 1989. So that's almost 35 years.
Wow.
And I haven't, since that day, the compulsion to drink, to drug, and to do all the other things that were not very good in my life left me. And I began the road to recovery. And it has been an amazing road. Everything, it took a while, but things turned around. Now, I'd love to tell you that life became super simple, super easy. Everything was great. Everything was glowing. It was a Leave It to Beaver world. No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? However, the way that I saw the world, the way that I lived in the world, the way that I experienced the world, all of that had changed.
Yeah.
Totally changed. And I began for the first time in my life, literally, for the first time, to experience what it felt like to have peace in my life and joy. And that has just gotten better and better and better. Even though I've been through some really difficult times, that feeling, that peace, that joy has not left.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's a great story. And, excuse me. Listen, I want to tell a little, because I think our stories are very parallel.
Yeah, sure.
And even the timelines. And I don't know if you agree with me on this, but it was, you're a senior in 74, so you're in high school from 70 to 74. You went in when the Vietnam War was
Oh,
still cranking.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was in danger of going.
Yeah, right, exactly. And
yeah.
I wasn't, but kind of was waning as I went into high school in '72.
Yeah.
And we kind of knew we were, the end was coming. But at that point in time, I think, and I would love for just anybody listening or anybody watching, if you've got somebody out there that is hurting and was in a position that Mike was in, I'm about to just give you a brief glimpse of my story too. It rides parallel train tracks, and let them hear this and let them know that both of us ended up at the same, answering the same knock on the door. But what I think was weird about the time frame I was in high school, there was no cause, the '60s, we weren't fighting for anything. What it was self-destruction to me. So my partying activity, it seems to me to this day, it was just centered around, I wanted to obliterate myself, and it didn't. For me, it was a 14-year path where I didn't care how I got high. I didn't care how many different ways I got high.
I get it. I totally get it.
But I had to escape the reality I was in somehow or another. And if I did it 14 different ways in one day, great. If a lot of times I did it 6 different ways in one day. But I woke up in the morning, and for 10 of those 14 years, the first thing I thought about when I was, my head was on the pillow was, how am I going to score something today?
Yeah.
And what happened was, alcohol was the easiest default. If you couldn't get any of the stuff you wanted,
right. Right.
Quaalude, speed, whatever, pot, you would end up at the, getting drunk. And so then that became the easiest, the glue factor of getting drunk was there. And yes, I have a history in my family of alcoholism. I do tend to agree with you as well. I think personally there's a lot of genetics to it. But what, and I'm interested to see if you had the same feeling. But as I describe that 14-year stretch of life, I describe it as I was an 8-cylinder engine that I was only running. Something was missing. It was like I was missing the 8th spark plug. I only had 7, or one wasn't fastened in well enough. And I just had this miss. I had this, I couldn't fill it. The drugs didn't do it. The women, the alcohol, I was a liar, a schemer, a thief. I had all these other things going on that, and none of that filled that void. And so did you feel like you were missing?
Yeah. People talk about, they call it, I hear people going, oh, it's an imposter syndrome or whatever. I go, yeah, for me, it was just incredible low self-esteem.
Okay.
Right. But to your point, yes, I was always seeking that peace, that calm, that joy, and nothing filled it. And that's the irony, right? That's what we look for, but yet that eludes us until we stop looking. Right. It's paradoxical, right? It's the craziest thing.
So we have, so 89, you have this transformational prayer breakfast. 20 minutes later, you get flooded over. 1987, I walk into a church on Christmas Eve, and I surrender. At that point in time, I did what you did. I just said, I can't. I didn't even say a prayer. I didn't go up to an altar. I just said, I can't do this, God. You have to take it.
Right.
And to your point, and so again, anyone listening, if you're struggling, these last 3-4 years have been crazy, diabolical, sinister, nutty. You just so the storyline here is, once we said, God, come into my life, you take control of the wheel, Jesus. That peace and joy and rest and that came into life. And we never, and I think what you and I are both saying was that up until then, we didn't know that. And at that moment when we surrendered and let God take charge, and we surrendered, the intermediary is Jesus. So we accept Jesus. And once we do that, now God starts showing us that, okay, now you're living out the design for your life. And here are the gifts that come with that, some of them. And, one of my favorite scriptures is John 10:10. The thief comes, and the Bible says only The thief comes only
Only.
to kill, steal, and destroy.
That's right.
But I come to give life more abundantly. And when you think about that, and you go to Philippians 4, and you look at Philippians 4:4-8,
All the way, yeah.
there's
Pray unceasingly, right?
and you can't,
Rejoice.
and there's this peacefulness
Yep.
that you can't explain.
No, I can't. I've tried to explain it to people. I just tell them it defies
Right.
explanation,
Right.
But the people that I know that have it understand it exactly.
Right.
And the thing is, it's so simple to get.
Yeah.
You just have to let go. You just
Yeah.
have to surrender control over your life.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds
Yeah,
simple.
no, I mean,
but that's the reality.
Yeah.
It is very simple. It's just not easy.
yeah. No.
Right?
yeah.
Because most of us, believe we still have it all figured out.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And today, even today in my life, it's those times when I push through something without stepping back and really letting God kind of direct me. Those are the times I get myself in trouble still. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to tell you, man, in the last 35 years, I've learned a few things, and I have. I don't do it as often, but I still do it.
Well, I think the one thing about us coming from addictive backgrounds is, the one thing I think that what wasn't taken away is you have a little bit of a propensity to, grab onto something and do that with fervor.
Yes.
And,
that's right.
I grabbed onto running, and running, I became, I just had this fever for running, and I was contagious about it. And I've been running for 44 years, but I hit some stretches where I was just, maniacal with it. And I think we tend to drag that in, and in business.
Yeah. Business for sure.
Yeah, we drag it into business, which leads us to an interesting, again, another set of commonality as we're in this CBMC TAF group. We're talking about our love affair in the business world our love affair with the business world, and it's
absolutely.
The common thread is the servicing customers in ways that create a good customer experience. But, mine has a different flavor to it, and my specialty has a different flavor to it than yours, kind of translated itself into software, into systems, into processes, which we're going to get into. But I think both of us love the fact that and think about this. This is, again, what's God saying in the Bible? He's saying, look, I've got a process for this. I've got this mapped out. If you follow my path, I'll light the road ahead for you. I'll ordain each step. You don't have to look in the rearview mirror. You can keep looking forward. I'm paraphrasing a lot of scripture. That's
you're
out there,
paraphrasing some Psalms and some Proverbs there.
Right?
Yeah.
But in essence, he's saying,
that's it.
He's saying, don't worry about the rearview mirror. Look forward. I'll ordain the steps. I'll light the path ahead. I'll be, I'll help you walk each step of the way. And if we just did business with the same love affair for the process of doing things right, if we could learn something from God's word, it's that, we can translate that to the business world.
I take many applications in my day-to-day work.
And what do we get together every month. There's a bunch of business owners, and we talk about ways that we could inject godly principles into
practice those principles in all our affairs, right? In our business and our family life and in all aspects of our life, that's really it. People talk today, work-life balance. I go, all you need to do is balance your me time with God time, and the rest will take care of itself. That's kind of the foundation of a ministry that I have called God's Got This, because I believe those are my 3 words. God's got this. So I started a little ministry about 3 or 4 years ago with some friends who were struggling with, surrendering, letting go. And so I started sending them, texting them little scripture passages that are around God's providence, God's promises. And that's grown. That's just grown. And I've done nothing except just people join it. I automated, of course, because I know how to do that kind of stuff. created a platform for it, and this is where the podcast that I'm working on is coming in, and
Awesome.
beyond my professional stuff. So it's starting to take shape.
That's awesome.
But this is another case, Jeff, where I just showed up. I didn't. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
like these big heady plans. I didn't
Right.
have a big business plan.
Right.
I just started doing stuff, and
Right.
God said, "Okay, this looks good," and man, it's just taken off.
That's
so
awesome.
it's
So
it's
so
exciting.
software is really the heartbeat of what you do. Is that right?
Actually, no.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay.
and no.
Okay.
So the sort of the new podcast that I'm working on is called The Heart with the ART capitalized of CRM. So most people think that what I do is I'm a business process expert, and that was what I was trained to do by AT&T. Early in my career, they sent me to schools. I got involved with Fortune 500s. I did a lot of that. I left there in the early 90s. I started my own business, software business, business process software consulting. That's what we did. Built that, grew that, sold that in June of 2000, and I've been doing this freelance work ever since.
Okay.
And I'm doing it now for smaller companies, whereas back then it was all larger Fortune 500s. They were big companies.
Okay.
Today, I take that and I apply that to much smaller companies. The principles are the same. The size, the scope, lots less.
Okay.
But the principles are all the same. And at the heart of it, people always go, "Wow, CRM software." I said, "No, it's really not." And this is where our similarities come into play, right? CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management.
Right.
And what CRM really is a business strategy. And that is all about managing the relationships that you have with your customers, which is where our passions overlap, right? To turn those prospects that you get into loyal, long-term customers who keep coming back to you and who refer other people to you because they love what you do.
Right.
So that is CRM in a nutshell. Now, how the software came into that, all right, is in order for you to do that effectively, you have to have processes and systems in place that are designed to actually move clients in a certain way as they move through their life cycle with you, as they move through the different stages of doing business with you, from the sales process into the fulfillment process, into the post-fulfillment support process, into the leverage process. There's the companies that really do this right, it's not accidental.
Right.
It's very, very well thought out, and it's very well documented, and it's systematized.
Right.
CRM's job is to help you manage the processes and the systems that make that happen.
Right.
Okay. And so that's all about process control tools. In other words, making sure people, know what to do, that they're all doing it, and that they're all doing it the same way every time.
Right.
And metrics so that you can keep an eye on whether or not the things that you're doing are working, maybe need a tweak, right? If people aren't doing things the same way, you never know, right? Most small businesses never reach their potential, and they don't because they don't have these systems in place.
Yeah.
Everything's just sort of a one-off. And I know you see it.
Well, yeah. Well, I tell people all the time, I look at customer service as the 3 Ps, right? So there's personality, there's process, right?
Process,
right? And you have to, and really what you have to realize is that, and the problem is so many people say, "Oh, Mike's got a great personality. He'd be great in customer service, so we'll stick him over there." Wait a minute. You've got to have, right? You've got to have a process first. Then you can plug the personality in.
Absolutely.
Right? But if you plug the personality in first and you have no process, it's like being on that high mountain road and you've got no guardrails to protect you from going off the road.
That's absolutely true, right? So that's where you and I have that synergy, right? I think we talked about. I kind of have the hard side of that, which is
Right.
the process, the documentation, the software. Automation's a big part of that. Instead of doing something Gutenberg style,
Right.
you push a button and 15 things happen automatically,
Right.
right? In the right order at the right time. That's really what we're talking
Right,
about.
correct.
But overriding all of that are the people.
Yep.
And if they don't have the soft skills,
Right.
the people skills to know how to have a conversation,
Right.
to know how to make a client feel, appreciated, to how to diffuse
Right.
a situation. If they don't have those skills, all the systems in the world aren't going to help.
Right. And
Right.
great point, because I think today we're saddled with lazy interviewing. I think we're saddled with lazy hiring.
Yep.
It's a warm body mentality in a lot of cases rather than a qualified person. Like,
Yep.
I was lucky to grow up in a sales culture that they had a 5-step interview process, and their calculable goals were, we want to determine before we ever give Mike a job offer that he's got 70% of the will factor.
Yes. Right.
We
right.
can give, if he says yes to the job, we can give him the 30% skill.
That's right.
But if he doesn't have that makeup, if he's 60% will and 40 skill, we can't offer him the job because he doesn't, because we can't we can't teach.
No, we hired back in my software company. Our goal was we hire for aptitude and attitude.
Right.
Right. I mean, our best guys didn't have college degrees.
Right.
I'll tell you that. Some of our young guys came right out of high school. I mean, these guys were code jackers, man. It was amazing what they could do. Right. They had aptitude, and the ones that we hired had the attitude.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that attitude that we were looking for was humility and teachability.
Yeah, I mean, character. Look how much character is overlooked, and it's kind of bundled. It should be bundled in that, that
integrity. Those were things we were looking for, and it was. I remember a guy saying, "Yeah, you guys didn't even ask me about what I knew about C or C++," and I go, "We figured you know, or if you don't know, we can teach you that. What I want to know is, how are you going to behave when you're sitting in a client's office." And a guy's left a $20 bill on his desk. Right. That's what I want to know.
Bingo. I mean, Mike, I've worked for 34 companies in 9 different industries, and I can't tell you how many times that I can dissect the customer relationship management function, the CSR function in the company, and what you realize is that person and that person don't have a heart for customer service. They should never be in it, because all the processes in the world are never going to change their heart towards serving the customer. So really, you have to put the horse before the cart. You have to make sure you're interviewing the right candidate, you're hiring the right candidate that then can be exposed to the process. But the processes, which I love to kind of spend some time on with you here, is, you said something very, very critical, that, you're moving the customer along through these different transitions. I liken it to every time we take a customer down a transactional journey, there's micro journeys.
Absolutely.
And we have depending on how your company does, but there could be 5 micro journeys, there could be 15 micro journeys.
Absolutely.
And each one of those micro journeys, you have the ability to either build further trust, build goodwill, or you have the opportunity to get them upset and have a negative customer experience. And to your point, the end goal that both of us are searching for is that long-term annuity customer that repeats transactions with us or refers us to someone else. It's too darn expensive to reinvent a lost customer, right?
That's the guys, you can make money doing adequate fulfillment.
Right.
You can become wealthy by building a loyal customer base. That's the key. And so many companies, especially small guys, they spend so much time. This is why my passion is here. They spend so much time chasing that next new customer.
Right.
They bring them in, they do a good job, or maybe they do kind of a half-baked job. And those guys and the customers leave on the back end, right? It's like trying to fill a bathtub and you don't have the plug in it.
Yeah.
Right? If you and people always go, well, where do we start when we work with you? I go, I want to start on your existing fulfillment process.
Bingo.
I want to start there.
Bingo.
Because if we fix that, or if we improve that, and then everything else we do is going to be easier.
Yeah.
Right? If that's not good, and customers come smiling in the front door and leave screaming going out the back, that's a problem. And so we're going to start there. People go, oh, is that CRM? I go, it's ultimately CRM. The biggest place that you have to build a relationship is in the fulfillment process. Yep. And if you don't do that well, if you don't do that with a wow experience, because you don't have the systems, the process, the metrics, you don't have the tools, they are not trained.
Right.
If you don't have that, right. Yeah, you could be a great carpenter, for example, but if everything else sucks, it's not good.
So, in other words, if you're fulfilling a customer's order, and in that process, if you've got, to use my vernacular, 10 micro journeys in that process, and you have no guardrails set, which are processes, you're just leaving everything to happen by chance.
Exactly.
Right?
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Bingo.
The companies that do it well, it works 90% of the time.
And so that's exactly, and folks, if you're listening and you haven't ever dove into this, that's exactly why they have lines on a road.
Yes, exactly. That's
right?
Perfect, yeah.
Because if the lines weren't
simple
there,
system.
we'd be all over the place.
It's a simple system. I tell people, they go, what should we systematize? I go, how do you answer the phone?
Yep.
Well, I don't know. Well, that's a system.
Yeah, I left no, funny you say that. So I left the company after a short period of time, and I left them. I felt compelled in my exit interview to leave a 12-page report.
Yeah. And
it was just a horrible experience for me. And one of the things was, I was working for a government division, and I'm like, I heard somebody say, I was in Cincinnati or something. Someone says, "Oh my gosh, I can't stand calling your phone over there." Why? Because it just sounds like I'm talking to somebody's grumbly aunt. So I'm like, So about 6 o'clock that night, I had never called the office after hours, right? Yeah. So I call up at 6 at night. I call up, "Hello, hi, if you have anything you need us to do, leave your name and number. We'll get back to you as soon as we can." I'm thinking, what the heck is that? Rather than, "Hello, thank you for calling the ABC company. We're not here right now, but your message is very important to us. If you could, leave your name and number and time of call, and we will get back to you as soon as we can tomorrow. Thank you." And I'm thinking, gosh, these people are right. And so in my exit interview, I said, your phone, it sounds like my Aunt Millie, just put some pies on the windowsill, and the crows ate 2 of them, and she's upset, and she's like, Well, lo and behold, I had that exit interview at like 4 in the afternoon. I go home at 10 that night. I'm like, I'm going to dial that number. Do you know what it said at 10 at night that night?
What you probably told them.
Yes.
Yeah, because they figured that out.
Yes. And I realized, you know what? At least they listened in the exit interview. But to your point, it's all those little.
They are little. They are little. And you said they're micro journeys, and they are. And they are. It's really those things that you do, right? But we have to, when we see something that works, we have to replicate it. Yeah. I always tell guys, I go, look, if you want to build a really successful business, build it as if you're going to franchise it.
Wow.
Because if you do that,
I love it.
You will have to create the systems, the processes, the tools that are going to make it valuable to somebody else. Because isn't that, after all, if you're building a business, you should be building it so that it increases in value, that so someday when you wake up, and you will, and you go, man, I don't want to do this anymore, you could sell it and you can make serious money and get a good return on your investment. Yeah. If it's not systematized, you can't do that. In fact, when we sold our company, we had a lot of systems in place, and the guys that bought it, that was one of the driving factors, was that, wow, you guys got this stuff documented. You got things in books. This was back before the interwebs, you got stuff in books. You got things, documented.
Yeah. Oh,
right. And I'm like, well, today it's even better, right? So we what we do is we codify that stuff into our systems processes using those CRM tools. That's how we do it. It's people used to think, it's just a fancy contact manager. No, no, it's a process enablement, process management tool. That's what it is. We happen to use contacts in there, but that's really not what its primary function is.
Yeah. So I mean,
Right?
as you're explaining this, I'm kind of digesting this now and
Yeah.
thinking you're like an insurance company.
Kind of like.
I mean, you ensure that these good practices are retained, they're replicated, they're
Yes.
installed, and to modify others. But you're
Yes.
talking about
Yeah.
having everything documented and having the processes outlined. So
Exactly.
somebody
And
can't
and
make a
and, and
mistake.
and more, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things that I see when I walk into a company that people are doing. I call it Gutenberg style,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
literally like that.
Yeah.
They're copying things, they're replicating things, they're putting it in this spreadsheet, then they move it over to this one, and I'm like, why? No. Well, let's push a button and have all that stuff happen at once. See, we can do
Yeah.
that when we understand what those processes are and what the
Yeah.
goal of each individual step
Yeah.
is. We can look for places where we can streamline,
Yeah.
automate, eliminate. I can't tell you how many times I eliminate steps
Oh.
because they're just not needed. Why do you do it that way? Well, that's the way we've always done it. One of the biggest benefits that I find in working with these companies, and they'll all tell you this, is that when we begin this process, they think they have their processes in place. And when we get into it about 25%, they realize they got nothing.
Right.
And they will tell you, this is the most valuable part of
Right.
this process was us first recognizing we didn't have those processes. And everybody now is on the same page, because I'll tell you, when I go in and do these requirements discussions or process mapping discussions, I hear every time, I didn't know we did it that way. That's not how I do it.
It's executive humility, huh?
Everybody's doing something
Yeah,
different,
yeah, yeah.
and they're all thinking they're doing it the same way,
Yeah.
and it's just, yeah.
So they've got to be humble from the boardroom to realize that they're. But when you expose it to them like that, like for instance,
Yeah.
I'm working in a situation right now, and this
Mm-hmm.
is the kind of stuff you're talking about. This kind of stuff that kills me.
Yeah.
When we don't have the same language, when we speak a customer language and an internal language.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I work for a company that has tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Dealer tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 pricing, but internally, when you talk to the customer service mechanism, it's A, B, C, and E. So now you got to do a cross-reference. Well, dealer is A, tier 1 is B, tier 2 is C. What happened to D? Oh, we don't know what happened to D. We just skipped to E. So tier 3 is E. Yes.
Yeah.
So this... and
No
you-
propensity for error there.
and when you're right, you talk to somebody internally, they're like, is that C? I don't know. Let me think about that for a second. They don't even know.
Yeah.
So in you're setting yourself up for lost margin, for calamity,
yeah.
for
Oh, yeah.
miscommunication. But here's
Yeah.
to your point. Get
Yeah.
rid of that. If you're going to say it's tier 1, 2, 3, dealer tier 1, 2, 3, then that's what it is.
Call it that.
My
Yeah.
gosh, it's just like this
Oh, yeah.
stuff is mind-boggling. It's so simple sometimes.
But it's so typical. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's just part of being human. I was talking to somebody today, and I said to her, she was kind of laying some things out, and I said, "Oh," and I kind of gave her what I was hearing, and she goes, "Oh, wow, I wouldn't have ever thought that."
Yeah.
It's because we're too close to it, right?
Yes.
We have a paradigm,
Yep.
and or we have a preconceived notion, and when we're stuck there, forget it, right?
Yep.
I just happened to be above the fray, right? I wasn't as close as she was, so I was able to articulate what she'd been trying to say in like 100 words down into like 10,
And that's
Right?
right. And that's
right?
is that part of
Yes.
your software?
Well, that's kind of how I approach it, right?
Yeah.
My whole idea is how do we boil things down into discrete processes or functions, right? Because if we can do that, we can integrate them, we can automate them, we can streamline them, and we can build something called a functional organization rather than a hierarchical organization, right? The most successful companies these days don't have big siloed hierarchies. they have functionally designed companies. And let me give you an example. I had a company, a customer one time that I worked with, and they were a landscaping company, pretty good size. So they had a lot of
Yeah.
machinery, and one of the functions in there was maintenance, small motor, small engine maintenance. Okay, so think
Sure,
like
sure.
take care of lawnmowers and
Sure.
leaf blowers
Yeah.
and okay,
Spark plugs, oil,
all the stuff
filters.
that put even carburetor clean,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, right? So they had that designed in, right? And sitting out at the front desk was this receptionist who happened to have grown up fixing small motors with her dad, who owned a small engine repair
Oh
shop.
my goodness.
Okay. So she's in customer service. Well, when they started doing a survey of people's skills, they realized, wait a minute, this gal knows small
Yeah,
engines.
Yeah.
And so part of her job then wasn't just receptionist, she was also doing small engine repair because that function was needed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying. Yep.
Right? But if we're thinking just, hey, that's marketing's job,
Right.
no.
So you're saying boil the functions down so you can identify them.
Discrete functions.
Discrete
right.
functions. So you can almost put them on a spreadsheet, and you've got
That's it.
22 discrete functions here.
That's in processing and order. What are the discrete functions?
Interesting.
Right? Because then you can break those things down into work queues, where you can utilize resources much better. It becomes a much better solution, right? Well, if you have a process that requires a step, this requires one person, this requires a lot more time, you can dedicate more resources to it and keep up with the other guys who are just doing one, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Business process 101, right?
Well, so you're kind of saying, in a way, look at your customer relationship management as though you were a manufacturer. let's say.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
well, like when I was in the pant business, right? So in the 807 area, which is Central America, South America, you measure pant productivity. You measure the assembly time in standard assembly minutes.
Yep.
And if you're at 33 minutes for a pair of pants, you're losing money. If you're down in that 27, 28 minutes, you're what we call a warm manufacturing base. But guess what? It's 4 pages of Excel itemized
Yes.
steps. There could be, 42
Right.
steps in
Right.
making a pair of pants.
Yeah.
And so you're monitoring everyone, you're measuring everyone. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. You're quantifying it. You're creating a discrete function.
Right.
You're saying that we have 42 discrete functions to make this pair of pants. And if we come back after holiday, we know we're going to start out, the ladies, that's called Three Kings Holiday down in Central America. When they come back and the ladies and guys come back to their stations, we're going to be in a cold-based manufacturing. I mean, a pair of pants is going to take us 34, 35 minutes.
Yep.
By the end of that week, we want to get down to 30, but by the end of the 2-week period, we want to get down to warm-based manufacturing where we're at 28 minutes. But we wouldn't know how to measure that if we didn't take those discrete functions and label
Break them out,
Right.
Correct. It's like making widgets. And I always tell people, that you're when we start thinking about this whole customer journey process, right? Every single business has the same set of sort of processes they follow.
Right.
All right. They generate leads. They develop leads.
Right.
They convert those into orders.
Right.
They deliver orders. They support orders, and then they market to the base, and this whole process comes again. Right. It's really true when you start looking at that. When you break down, for example, the lead process, there's really several steps or discrete processes. Right. Now they can all happen really fast, but if you really think about it, they are separate. So the first part is, and I tell people all the time, they go, CRM, that's all about emailing and lead gen. And I go, no, lead generation has nothing to do with CRM. Lead generation is the thing that you do, the stuff that you do to get them to your front door.
Right.
Once they cross that threshold, whether that's a digital threshold, a physical threshold, or a phone call threshold, whatever it is, once they cross that line, now your CRM is engaged, right? Out here, it's just you're doing stuff, right? But as soon as they cross that threshold, that's when your CRM process begins.
So you're saying like lead generation is just you're walking up to the vehicle in the parking lot. You haven't gone in and turned the keys on.
Not
yet,
at all.
And you
No,
haven't
no, they
started
haven't. They
that.
haven't come into your store,
Yeah.
right? So you can't really. You can affect them. Your messaging is what pulls them there, right? And part of that messaging is how awesome you'll be treated
Right.
if it's true.
Right.
If it's BS, that's not good either.
Right. Okay.
Right? Does that make sense?
Well-
But once they get there, now we got to establish a relationship with them. I always, especially in companies where you have a complex sale, people tend to just go, "Hey, thanks for stopping by. You want to get married?"
Yeah.
I mean, that's the analogy, right? They start selling them right away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't know you. I don't know anything about you. Maybe I want to get married, but right now I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to step back and think about this, right? What is our process here? Our process really in sales or in conversion is really a simple one. It's not easy, but it is simple. It's basically to provide clients with the information they need to make the best decision for them. Right? That's really what it's about.
Right.
It's not about manipulating. It's not about closing the sale.
Right.
It's about providing information that will help them make a good decision.
Right.
Because if they make a good decision and they feel good about it, guess what? Your job of turning them into a loyal customer becomes 1,000% easier.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't feel like they were forced, manipulated, drawn, pulled, pushed. They don't feel that way at all. They feel like they got the opportunity to make the decision. And it's true. So what do we provide them with? Rather than sending them, a bunch of, trying to close them and, force meetings, what we do is we start sending them information or providing them with information. What do you need to know?
Right.
The idea, the simplest idea, and I heard this years ago, and it was basically this. Your job at that stage is to educate them to the point where, A, they come to understand that they really can't live well without what it is that you can do for them, okay, whatever that service, product, whatever that is. And the most important thing is, when they are ready to buy, they should buy from you and only you, even if your price is higher than anybody else. That's your job during that lead development stage. Because if you get them and you do that well, by the time they hit the active sales process, they're ready to go. Then it's just a matter of working through the details. Yeah. How much does it cost? So, what's your delivery policy? Blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. Yeah. You're in the middle of that every day. Yeah. Right? And then on the back end, when I complete an order, what happens then? Yeah. Right? Right. The sales guys shouldn't be out of the loop. Right. Right? You've handed it off to the delivery guys, right? Or you've handed it off to the order fulfillment guys, right. But you better be in the middle of that. And you better have a process that makes sure that you're checking in on that customer, right, to make sure that everything's going well. Right. Right? And if it's not, you can be preemptive. Right. Yeah. You see where I'm going with this? 100%. And every one of these steps 100%. Has micro steps in them. Yeah. And people, there's different people who have different responsibilities. So how do we pass that baton all the way down the line without dropping it? Right. CRM. Yeah. Bingo. Right, making sure that we have the triggers defined, the handoff defined, the metrics defined, making sure that we have it. That's CRM. Right. That's the software. That's its job. Right.
And then you're creating a fail-safe network where, right, you may finesse things along that way, right, incorrect. Maybe somebody says it with the wrong tone or whatever, but at least you don't. Yep. At least that customer was subjected to all of those steps. And whether it was that customer or the next customer, they were all subjected to those same steps. And that's been, yes, to me, that's where the love affair centers is. Yeah. You've got to show your customers, if you're going to ask for their repeat trustworthiness, you've got to show them that your consistency is there. And how do you do the consistency? With the processes.
Exactly. You said you were a runner. Yep. I was a runner in high school. I was a distance runner. But during track season, I ran 880 relays. It was a longer relay, right? But we worked on more than anything else. You know what we worked on? The baton handoff. Bingo. That was because that's the
Bingo.
most important thing, and that's where processes fail 99% of the time.
Right.
You show me something that got broke, I'm going to tell you it's in the handoff between this process to that process.
Right.
Somebody didn't pick up but somebody didn't hand it off, right? Or the guy getting it dropped it. And that's when things go south. And that's why you need good systems and good metrics and good, metrics are going to help you identify those problems. Right. Where are we dropping the baton?
Right. Yeah. No.
Right?
No.
We could talk about this for hours.
Oh yeah. No. We had a. I worked for a pant manufacturer, and my biggest customers were Kohl's and Target. And when I left this company, I'll never forget. I still have the email from the lady at Target. She said, "Wow, you made our job so much easier. If we always say inside here that you and this other guy do the best job with attention to detail." And so okay, let's back up. Why did I come off being attentive to detail? Because my company, 2 of their 9 interviews before they interviewed were about detail, correct? And then once I got in, they go, "Hey, when we get a pant program from Target or Kohl's or Land's End or LL Bean, whoever it is, we have what's called program management."
Yes.
And they have a notebook that internally we have to follow. And what is it? It's all the baton handoffs.
Yeah.
It's all the processes. And so,
yeah.
We could tell you because we did the discrete functions, we could tell you 5.5 months ahead of time if your pant program is going to be late because it takes 6 months to make pants in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh. And we could say, hey, the fabric took 10 days longer to get from Taiwan to Singapore, and then from Singapore to Calcutta, or then from Calcutta it goes to Sri Lanka, and we need an extension, but it's 5.5 months away. Yeah, well, I can't make the eventual ship that's going to transport it. I can't make it go 30 knots faster.
Nope.
I can't, I can't put it on a plane for $1.95 extra. To get it.
Right.
This is what happened. So, but we could see what was happening by having those discrete functions. And in essence, what were we doing? And this is my gig, customer experience.
Yeah.
We were telling that customer 5.5 months in advance, hey, listen, we need an extra week. And you know what they would say? Oh my gosh, I'm a retailer. I run ads. We have thank you.
You just saved me $1 million.
I'll shift the ad from June 13th to the 20th to the 20th to 27th.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
That's right.
Right? Instead of waiting, what do most people do? Oh, June, 3rd, well, we're going to be late. What? How long ago did you know? Oh,
yeah, exactly.
But again, we were so effective at it, and we were a publicly held company. We were effective at it because we had this notebook, this program was called a program outline. And if you followed it, it
that's
was
the franchise.
guardrails.
That's the franchise model, right?
Yeah.
Why are McDonald's franchises worth so much?
Bingo.
Because if you follow the steps exactly, you'll make $1 million.
Bingo.
That's why.
Bingo.
Right? So that's why you got to build your business that way. Right?
So this is excellent. So this is your specialty. Now, how much of this did you was seeded from AT&T? Did you learn a lot of this?
I did. I was very fortunate to get that background, right? But when the passion for CRM didn't really happen until probably the late 80s. So most of my career during the 80s, I was in this group of guys selling business process improvement and things like that. AT&T did that, by the way, because it was all about communication, right? And so in the late 80s, I got assigned to a project at AT&T to look into this new software. Because we just were getting PCs. This will date us. Yeah. 286 PCs with dual floppies. You probably remember them, right?
I remember them well.
Green screen monitors. That's what you had.
You had a 20 megabyte Seagate hard drive as like an upgrade?
10 megabyte.
There you go.
Yeah. Right. That was, and you'd pay $5,000 for that.
Yeah.
But we were just getting into that.
286.
Yeah. So there was new software coming out, and one of the big buzzwords back then was Salesforce automation. You probably remember hearing that. Sure. Well, really all that was just keeping on top of your contacts, right? Hey, I need to make a phone call to this guy on the 8th. Yeah. It was very fancy calendaring, task management. And that's a part of CRM today. It's a big part of it. It's not just tied to sales, though. It's tied to the other stuff, right? But they put me in charge of kind of doing a little investigation, and I fell in love with it, and in fact implemented ACT. Remember
Yes,
ACT?
absolutely.
The very first
Absolutely.
ACT for AT&T, a small unit in AT&T, and I went, wow, this has real promise.
Yes, I remember.
And so, that's what I did then for the remainder of the next few years. I worked on that. And then when I started my software company, we kind of focused on that, but for the call center. You've done a lot of work in call centers. We were developing software for call centers, screen pop software and things like that. Back in the day, that was like really magic.
Sure.
Call routing, calls, that's all of that. That's what we did. But CRM was kind of overlaid over the top of that. And then when I sold my company, I decided this is what I wanted to do.
Nice.
So that's what I've been doing for the last 24 years is just freelance and CRM, business process improvement.
So I mean, somebody who's interested in talking to you and going through some investigation on how you could help. I mean, 24 years of being on your own, doing this, specializing.
Lots of experience doing my own business, so I know what that takes.
So you got the customer references, you got the testimonials built up,
Yeah.
And you can find this on your website again. What's your website again?
It's you can use crmgrowthengines.com. That's a little shorter.
Okay. crmgrowthengines.com, and we'll put those links on.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Put those links on the podcast notes as well. So how much does integrity and transparency come into play with what you do?
It's critical. Yeah. One of the things that people know about me is I'm very picky about the jobs or the projects I take on. I want to make sure that I've got that commitment at the top. You were talking about coming from the board. If your chief executive is not committed, don't do it.
Right.
Because it's not going to work.
Correct.
You got to have that commitment from the top.
Correct.
That, and then you have to have, I really like these companies that are super excited, that have vision for what they could be versus what they are.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But integrity is super important. And guys know me, it's how I'm known, right? Is I don't bill for things that I don't do. For example, I used to get involved with consultant interventions, where you'd figure out, hey, these guys sent a busload of these young guys over here. They're charging me $250 an hour for me to teach them how to do their job. I don't do that.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
If it's something that I don't know how to do, I'll tell the client, hey, I'm not sure. I'll figure it out, but I'm not going to charge you to figure it out.
Sure.
Right? I'll charge you to figure out how to integrate it into your business once I understand it, but I'm not going to do that. My billing is impeccable.
Nice.
People go, hey, I got this bill from you for like $500.87. I'm like,
because that can get fuzzy, right? I mean, in this consulting world, that can get fuzzy.
And I don't want it to be fuzzy.
Right.
I don't. That's the surest way to lose the goodwill of your clients is to take advantage of them.
Sure.
So
what's the biggest misconception out there today about CRM?
that I'll tell you, nine times out of 10 people think they have it already. I have Outlook. That's not a CRM.
That's a response.
Right. We have a bunch of spreadsheets.
Whoa.
That's really the biggest one. Or we have what I see most of the time, Jeff, is either people have overbought CRM products, they've been sold what they don't need, or they've underbought. They have bought the wrong thing and it can't do what they need it to do because the people involved didn't really take the time to understand what it was they were trying to do, right? I've seen companies that have spent tens of thousands of dollars for CRM software that never really did what it needed to do, right?
Oh, I could only imagine. I mean, all these,
there's gazillions of them.
Yeah, and is it a case that there's a lot of meat and potatoes in that software program? Is it the case that they just don't know how to use it?
A lot of it's both. So a lot of times it's filled with things they don't need, and then they were never trained how to use it. Right. And it's not because the way I approach training when I get into this is I teach it around processes.
Right.
Here's how we're going to use our CRM, in this case, to create a contract. Automatically create it, automatically send it for signature. I'm going to teach you how to do that. I'm not going to go, hey, I'm going to teach you about, here, this is this whole big thing, right? Fill in this, push this button. No, no, no. I want to sit down with you and go, all right, sales guys, today we're learning about how to do contracts. A discrete process. Boom, right? And they get it. And tomorrow I'll teach you something else.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So what do you? I mean, when you get into the real heated discussion, but when you get into the real meat of your discussions with potential customers, what do you see as the biggest wrestling match corporations are having inside their companies?
Boy, that's good. I really think the biggest thing is people just aren't on. They're not locked into the same vision.
Okay,
that's what I see. Or they've never taken the time to really think it through. Right. One of the things I always recommend to people when I first start working with them, there's a couple books I recommend. One of them is called The E-Myth. You may have heard of it. It's called The E-Myth Revisited. It's a good book. It talks about systemization and how to think about it. The other one is a book by Simon Sinek, called Start with Why. Right. That is a fantastic book. And then, if you really want to, if you're kind of a smaller company and you really want to do some damage, you want to be a big company. There's another one of my favorite books is called The Pumpkin Plan.
I never heard of it.
Okay. It's by a guy named Mike Michalowicz. And it's all about how to build a company that is comprised of award-winning pumpkins using a methodology that award-winning pumpkin growers use to grow award-winning pumpkins. But these all apply directly to the process of building an award-winning company.
Wow. What's his name? What's the name of this book?
It's called The Pumpkin Plan.
Oh my.
It's a short book.
Yeah.
It's a guy's name is Mike Michalowicz. You'll love it. You would love it, actually.
I'm gonna look into it because it sounds good.
He's a little bit irreverent in a fun way. Right, but you'll get it right away what he's getting at.
Well, I think that's all saying the same thing. I grew up with Harold Janine. He was ITT CEO, and he said here, I have a business theory, theory G, and it is basically you figure out what you want to do. Which he answered the why. Figure out what you want to do, and then figure out everything you need to do to get there.
That's right.
So how do you write a book? You write the last chapter first, and you write everything else leading up to it.
Perfect.
And I mean, I think that so many of us, and what he's really saying in all that is you've got to break things down into functionality, compartmentalized chunks, and work your chunks on up to the...
exactly, right? What do they need to know to get here? Right, which is, again, back to that whole process of how I train people. I start with this. What do we, at the end of the book, if the idea is to successfully sell a widget, and it includes all these things that you got to do to get that, then you got to learn all those things. Right, in the right order.
I mean, you do. And in sales, I was taught by the Lanier Corporation, and we had an easy 5-step selling process, but they inverted it from day one. They said, okay, we're going to teach you the 5 steps of the sale, but to understand the 5 steps of the sale, you have to understand the 5 steps of the buying process.
Yep, absolutely.
And so it was attention, interest, conviction, desire, action. And so here's the best way to
You're right.
Here's the best way to describe it. Something gets you and your wife the tension to go out to eat, and then you go to a restaurant and you sit down in a restaurant and you start, somebody comes up and obviously they're trying to create a good good experience, right? But they come up and, so now you go through this process of give me a menu. So now you start looking at, so you want attention, interest, right? And then conviction, desire, you start seeing yourself eating seafood rather than pasta and you build up
That would never happen, by the way.
Well, I mean, I love that too. So you start building up this conviction, desire. And the point was, how many times has that waiter or waitress ever come up to your table and said to you, okay, sir, are you ready to order? We're like, I don't think so. I'm sorry. We're going to leave. Thank you very much anyways.
No, they never do.
So their whole message was, guys, gals, if you follow the steps of the buying process as you're selling, your close is really unnecessary.
It's
because,
not a close is just it's
Right.
just it's the next step in the process.
Okay, so
It's
they
the,
taught us
the
stuff like-
logical next
Yeah,
step.
they taught us like direct or alternate,
Yeah.
either or, simple stuff. But
Yeah.
the bottom line was you're
Yeah.
not persuading at that point.
Nope.
Because just like the meal, if
Right.
you didn't get up to leave because all the 4 steps
So
were met.
So remember I was talking about that lead development process? That's what we're talking about. Before you get to that
Right.
sales guy coming in and going, okay,
Bingo.
let's talk about how we do what we do, blah, blah, blah. But you know, all of that stuff.
Right.
How do we show you? Well, we give you use cases. We give you testimonials. We have little vignettes about people using the product, and we show, hey, look how fast this thing cuts through wood.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Well,
That's that warm up
yeah.
stage, right? And we do that before or during,
Yep.
while you're spending those expensive sales resources. Why are you doing that, right?
Right. And well, exactly. And one of the tools we had embedded into that interest and into that conviction desire phase was evidence defeats disbelief.
Amen.
Right. So we used defeats was your acronym: demonstrations, examples, facts, analogies, testimonials,
and
exhibits.
symbols.
Yeah.
That's the old Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
The
So,
old Dale Carnegie.
but
sales
it really
Yeah.
when you think about it, if you can prove to somebody
Mhm.
like what you're saying, through evidence that it works. I mean, the close should be a natural process.
It's just the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's what we're saying. All of that are built on processes.
Every one of them.
Going back to God, God tells us, especially in John 3, here's the process.
Yep.
You've got to die to yourself. You've got to be born again spiritually. You've got to, just like Jesus, you've got to raise yourself up from, you've been resurrected. Your old self is now dead. It's gone. You're now a new person.
Yeah, totally.
And if you don't do that, you're never going to get what I created and what this whole thing is about. My whole story is about. You're never going to get it.
Yeah, I think somebody, I think it might have been you, asked me a few weeks ago. What's your one piece of advice?
Yep.
I think you asked me that,
Yep.
and I thought for a minute, and I said, I would say if I could go back to when I was 30,
Right.
and if I could just say those 3 words, God's got this. If somebody would have told me back then that I really don't have to push strife. I don't have to do that.
Yep.
I just have to show up in a place of willingness to be God's handiwork, right? That's all I have to do. He'll take care of the rest, right? And we'll be led down paths that we never thought. Like I mean, today I'm sitting here going, man, I never would have thought I'd been here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have, this wouldn't have been in my script. My script was rock and roll stardom.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'd have,
Well, I was going to go to, so here I am at a mic. I was going to go to Connecticut School of Broadcasting. So, I grew up on WNEW,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Scott Muni and all the boys. And,
Yeah,
here it was.
legendary.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I want to be an FM DJ. So and my buddies talked me out of it because back then they're like, Mace DJs talk for like 4 hours and you have like a really high pitched voice. And when you get excited and, dude, no one's going to listen to you for 4 hours. Now it's all programmed. It's all different. But back then, you had control of the mic, and and back then, as an 18-year-old, I had this high-pitched, excited voice that, nobody's. What's this guy doing? Who's this guy? So I bailed out. But that's what I wanted to be, and and so who would have ever thought we're here today? But here's the great news. Again, if you're listening to this, watching this, pass it on to somebody, because you obviously see 2 guys very passionate about business, but we were both transformed and taken out of an ugly life. And I don't know about you, I've been dry since December 23rd, 1987.
Yep.
No drugs, no alcohol, nothing.
So you got me by a couple of years, March 17th, 1989. So
but the answer for both of us was centered in Christ.
Yeah, it was the answer. It was it wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right. And has life been perfect for either of us?
No.
But is it great that we can hit the pillow at night and we can find peace, we can find rest, we can find comfort?
Absolutely. Even in the middle of storms. Right. And I would say that's the thing I would tell my young self is, look, There's going to be storms, but you're going to get through it.
Right.
You know, and it's a thing, right? You're going to get through it by letting go.
Right.
That's how you're going to get through it.
Right.
The tighter you hold on to something,
Correct.
the more difficult it's going to be.
I think
Let go,
I
right?
think the key word surrender.
Surrender is the key word. It was the surrender for
Yep.
my recovery,
Yep.
and it's the surrender, and it's the key word in my business.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I've like, man, I need another project. You know, I'll just tell God, I'll say, you know, I'm kind of getting a little low here. I'm a little worried. And usually in my little conversations that I have with these, haven't you learned by now? You don't, I got this.
Yeah,
Right?
God's got it. Yeah, I
and
love
then,
it.
And then
I love
2
it.
days later, I get a call from somebody
Yeah.
like, you know, I heard somebody, blah, this guy told this guy. And I'm like, oh, wow. And it turns out to be a perfect project.
Wow.
Right? Timelines, everything. I can't, that happens all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
People go, oh, no, no, I'm not kidding.
Yeah. It
You
just
know.
falls into place. So how somebody follow this? God's got this. Where do you
Oh,
find it?
yeah, just you could, you know, I the best way to do it is just go on my website. I've
Okay.
got a little thing. I've also got a Facebook group called
Okay.
God's Got This.
Okay.
You can just find that.
Okay. Okay.
And
And it's
yeah.
open to the public?
Yeah. Well, it's a private group, but you
Yeah,
know,
right,
it's
right. You
if
get-
you're there, you're there because
right.
you want to, you know, you want
Correct.
to learn a little bit about this. But you know, that's the thing. I haven't even started the
Yeah.
process of. I haven't had to promote it.
Yeah.
You're
yeah.
the first guy that asked me, well, how do you know,
Yeah.
most of the time it's word of mouth.
Yeah.
People just
Yeah.
send it,
Great.
you know,
It's
and I
awesome.
have sign up links and all that stuff. But
Well, Mike, it's been a super pleasure. Is there anything
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you that you'd like
I
to
think
talk
this is-
about?
we
or-
could talk hours, Jeff. You and I knew
Yeah,
that already.
Yeah. No, it's been great. It's been awesome having
Yeah,
you. and
thanks for having me.
yeah,
This
we
has been great.
We thank you. And, you know, we always end the show. We love to feature a Lost in the Shuffle track from the old rock and roll days.
Oh,
You're an old
yeah.
rocker. So
Oh,
what's
yeah.
your pick for today?
My pick for today is "Carry On, My Wayward Son"
Yeah.
by Kansas, and it really is my story. Wayward son. That
Yeah.
is who I was.
Yeah.
And lost, tossed about a ship like a storm on the ocean.
Wow.
You know, that set of lyrics in there is just, that describes
There's a
me.
little bit of energy in that song, too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Always,
It's great.
it was a staple in the car riding
Oh.
around, you know, in the
Yeah,
mid 70s. So,
yeah.
no, great tune. And I believe a couple of those guys were believers too, weren't
Oh, yeah. Kerry Livgren was definitely. And you could hear this transition. I'm a big Kansas fan, going all the way back. But if you listen to the lyrics over the course of year, you can hear
Yeah.
his
they?
transition
Yeah.
from kind of secular into a Christian
Interesting.
world, because the lyrics start to shift,
Interesting.
right? And you can really hear it.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's awesome. Well, folks, you'll see it, and as you're looking at the YouTube experience, you'll see it in the upper right-hand corner. It's a little card, so it's Lost in the Shuffle track. We'll also have it on my website, SimpleBiz360.com. You can find this, and Mike, I thank you so much.
It's
and
been great. I've enjoyed it.
all Mike's contact information and his links are in the show notes as well. And, you know, we just appreciate it, brother. And
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you. Safe travels. And as we tell everybody, thank you. And we will see you in 160